This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good looking friends. Today was a nutty day. All sorts of stuff happening around Prince Harry and Meghan Markle and the royal family. First off, DHS, Department of Homeland Security, files to have an extension to provide Prince Harry's visa information, which is kind of sus, in my humble opinion. Then you have Barack Obama visiting 10 Downing Street, and then on top of it, the shift and changes that happened to the website. So, what do you think is going on? Do we think the timing around all of this is coincidental, or do we think that this has something to do with Harry's visa? Honestly, I don't think any forms were filled out for Harry, and in my humble opinion, it could be two things. One, they could be scrambling to put together some type of document to backdate and to show some type of narrative. And two, it could be possibly trying to get Harry maybe to do a reverse FOIA. That was something that was talked about in the transcript. Who knows? But why do they need 2 weeks to deliver information on Harry's visa? I'm guessing the Harkles knew that this was coming, hence the reason why they set up their own Sussex.com shop. And, it is surprising that they did include the Sussex website in this little blurb that they put up for Meghan and Harry now, directing everybody over there if you want to learn about the nefarious dealings that they're doing. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, they're still linked to the royal family, but now they're off on their own venture. It almost gives a vibe of half in, half out, kind of. A friend of mine on Tumblr pointed out that they removed the prince from Harry's name, so now he's just called the Duke. I guess he can still be called Prince Harry, but they updated the website to remove anywhere where it says Prince Harry. It's now the Duke of Sussex. Anyhow, the next topic that I want to talk about is going back to what Harry said in the most recent Good Morning America interview he did, in which he said the mission continues. So that had me thinking, especially since I was listening to the Supreme Court hearing today on the government censoring Americans on social media. And then it got me thinking about this censorship industrial complex on what happened with the Hunter Biden laptop, as well as Harry's involvement with all these people. And then it all clicked. Right after I saw the interview with Samantha Markle, Dan Wooten, and Samantha's lawyer, Peter Tickton. This mission that Harry speaks of, well, listen for yourself.
The mission continues. And so a large part of this mission is to try and change the media landscape within the UK for the benefit of the whole country. But for me, I can see how it can be done. And there's very few people within the world right now who have the evidence and the information that I have to be able to change that.
Definitely a major part of it because her husband happens to be a member of the Aspen Institute. If nothing else, that has to turn on some alarms here, because he's one of the 50 governors in there that determine what's misinformation for the internet.
So again, one of the reasons why I am moving the mission of changing the media landscape within the UK from being personal to my life's work.
There is a big, big, big difference between you and your family that I get. Mm-hmm. They're on option one, can't change the press, just accept it. You're on option two, must do something about the press. If I don't stand up to what I consider these abuses, no one else will. But their approach, which is to sort of say, in a free country, you've got to have a free press, people in power, your family have got to be scrutinized, someone's got to do it, we just got to rub along with them.
And this response that Harry gives shows you that Harry is not in favor of democracy and he's not in favor of free speech, as is he's alluding to his family neither.
That's not wrong, is it? That's not a crime, that attitude.
No, the scrutiny, 100%. The press.
The accepting of, just you can't control it. That's what I mean.
Well, my family tried to control it for years, and they still try to control it because of their relationship with the British press. Was an acceptance of the repercussions. But what is more worrying is that those repercussions are so obvious, I guess, across the British press that there's no one else. If they want to hold us and the rich and powerful to account, and they want to police society, then who's policing them? That's something that William and I have talked about for many, many years. Who is policing them?
And this is what makes these people dangerous. When you have this progressive leftist who is advocating for censorship. And as I know more, looking back on this interview and hearing him say, who's policing them? Meaning, who's policing the journalists? So essentially, what is going on with this censorship industrial complex is this whole machine that is designed to make sure that the information that people are receiving is the right information. So with the fact checkers and Google suppressing information, making sure that the government's messaging is getting out to the public to maintain so-called order. This is so Orwellian that, it's scary to see that this guy actually believes in it. He doesn't care about your freedom. He doesn't care about your opinion being shared or expressed. He doesn't care about democracy. And this is what concerns me. If, let's say, the Supreme Court today comes back and rules that, yes, the government can intervene because he sees what America is doing to its own people. And he wants that essentially to happen in the UK. We may have the First Amendment, but it's seriously under threat. Currently, right now, I've shared that the media is controlled unofficially by the state. And this is what Prince Harry wants. He wants the monarchy and the institution and the government to be able to control that as well, which to a certain degree, it sounds like it's happening in the UK. But in order for this to fully work, it has to happen here, which means they have to tear down the First Amendment. If the First Amendment goes, then everything else goes. Our right to bear arms, our right to privacy, our right to own personal property. I mean, if you think about it, if you can't voice your opinion or speak out, then everything else can be taken away from you.
But for me, I can see how it can be done. And there's very few people within the world right now who have the evidence and the information that I have to be able to change that.
And right here, folks, he is referencing the Aspen Institute and the resources in this censorship industrial complex. This interview happened in January in 2023 when the book was released. The Twitter files and the censorship industrial complex didn't get exposed until March of 2023. So now in hindsight, when you look back at this interview, you realize that this is what he was talking about.
And I think, again, what's happened to my wife and what's happened to us happens to so many people on a daily basis because of the British press, because of the racism, because of the cronyism, because of the lies.
And Harry would know about the lies and cronyism because he was around when they were suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop at the Aspen Institute. So when you look at the involvement of the Aspen Institute and the role that they played in hurting America's ability to make judgments for themselves, now had they not suppressed the article about Hunter Biden's laptop, we could have had a different outcome today. And we're in this shit as a result of people like this one who had meddled in trying to keep information away from the American people.
And if you're on the left, settle down. I voted with you my entire life. This is not a video about pro-Trump. This is a video about anti-corruption and anti-military industrial complex takeovers of our world. And if you're on the right, settle down. This video is not about Trump. This video is about the CIA. And what does the CIA have to do with Hunter Biden's Russian disinformation story? Well, you'll remember that when the Hunter Biden laptop story was published to the New York Post, weeks before the election, more than 50 former intelligence officials signed a letter saying that that was Russian disinfo. Although they didn't actually present any evidence, they just said that it's deeply suspicious that the Russian government played a significant role in the case. This letter was apparently delivered to Politico by Nick Shapiro, former top aide under CIA Director Brennan. Nick Shapiro has more than 15 years of crisis management experience in the White House, at the CIA, and in the private sector. Wonder what kind of crises he has experience managing. Anyways, this is the letter. This is just part of the extensive list of intelligence operatives that signed it. And I did not cherry pick these. These are literally just the first names on the list. Number 1, James Clapper, ex-director of national intelligence, who committed perjury for telling a congressional committee hearing that the NSA does not collect any type of data on millions of Americans. Nice. Number 2, Michael Hayden, who was the director of the NSA when they were doing that program. Oh yeah, and he's been accused of lying to Congress during the 2007 testimony about the CIA's enhanced interrogation program, i.e. torture. Nice. Those are just the first two on the list. It goes on and on. You get the point. So anyways, the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinfo because this letter, signed by a whole bunch of career CIA liars, said it seems like it probably is Russian disinfo. That was all the ammo they needed for Mr. Biden to cite that letter during presidential debates and on and on and on, as though it was fact. As reported by the New York Times, 3 years later, no concrete evidence has emerged to confirm the assertions that the laptop was Russian disinformation, and portions of its contents have been verified as authentic, as in, the whole thing has been verified as authentic. In fact, there were 3 laptops, not just one. And in fact, the House Judiciary Committee and Subcommittee on the Weaponization of Federal Government, i.e. corruption in our government, revealed that the same FBI personnel who were warning social media companies about a potential Russian hack and leak operation in the run-up to the election knew that the laptop belonged to Hunter was not Russian disinformation. And just wait, because we're getting to the part that you don't know about yet, where the CIA actually did war games on this very thing to prepare the media for how to report about it before it came out. Because the minute the New York Post reported about it, all the rest of the media went on full blitz mode. The Hill, PBS, CNN, NBC, the Boston Globe, Business Insider, Huffington Post, MSNBC. There was a coordinated campaign across all media to smear it as Russian disinformation, which is insanely ironic because a sad number of people have been taught to hate Trump so much. Like, sure, not a great guy, whatever, but you've been taught to hate Trump so much that you're not paying attention to court proceedings about your own president. This is the official report from the House Oversight Committee on Hunter Biden's influence peddling and the Biden family making money off of it. The Bidens and their associates have received over $20 million in payments from foreign entities. Over $20 million. That would be over $3 million from Romania, $6.5 million from Ukraine, and wait, $3.5 million from Russia. While they are calling the Hunter Biden story Russian disinformation, the House Oversight Committee published receipts with extensive financial forensics, right down to actual bank statements, actual wire transfers, actual accounts. But the media was so effective at discrediting it as Russian disinformation because they were prepared. In fact, just a month before, they had already had a special conference where they prepared for what they would do if there was some compromising leak about Hunter Biden. They all knew what he was up to. And so the Aspen Institute held a Hunter Biden exercise right before the election, where they went over a totally fictional 11-day scenario where what happens if someone leaks fake made-up information leaked by Russians about Hunter Biden's employment with the Ukrainian energy company Burisma. So to be clear, certain people within the Aspen Institute concocted a scenario that was framed as Hunter doesn't do anything wrong, but the other side is going to try to smear him, and maybe the Russians will release disinformation, falsely claiming that there's sketchy things going on with Hunter's finances. And so as news organizations, you should all be ready for Russian disinformation when it happens, because it would be really bad for our election if Russia were to do that. So they got everyone together, and this is the actual page 1 of the document of their scenarios that they went over, and all the different news agencies went over how they would respond. We're talking like MSNBC, CNN, Twitter, everyone was there. They literally war gamed out how to deal with this leak before it happened, because someone at the Aspen Institute suggested that maybe it would happen, and if it did, that would be Russian disinformation. So when it did, all the news agencies already were primed to believe that it was Russian disinformation. And so when a whole bunch of CIA operatives published this letter that claimed it was probably Russian disinformation, all these news agencies were already ready to accept that that was the truth. Because this institute, called the Aspen Institute, that's funded by all the gigantic billionaire philanthropy foundation, and has literally been asking the CIA to be its buddy since the very first year it was founded, and to this day invites the director of the CIA every single year to give talks, that institute primed them to believe that it would be Russian disinformation. Let's rewind for everyone to just quickly remember what's going on here. We have a president who was elected under circumstances that involved the CIA doing things. And then during his presidency, we have 2 wars going on. In part 2, we'll go over how the CIA probably didn't have anything to do with starting the Ukraine war. And the other war is wildly unpopular because we are literally funding a foreign country bombing civilians and children. And I know that most of you on the left are opposed to the war in Israel, and you can probably use your brain to kind of make the connections between the CIA and Mossad and the aligned interests in those deep government groups. So you have a president that was elected with help from the CIA, who now has 2 wars going on that the CIA is really big on, along with Lord knows what else in the shadows. I might mention that all these CIA names that signed that letter, they have one thing in common. None of them were ever elected. You have never voted for any of these people, and yet they have worked in government in Central Intelligence Agency for years, decades, some of them. When conspiracy theorists talk about the deep state, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about intelligence agencies aligned with military-industrial complex interests, aligned with media organizations that we know the CIA has been influencing, buying off, and subverting for decades. All just pushing little bits of influence here and little bits of reporting there and covering things up there and flailing and flaming about things there to slowly push an agenda that is a little bit more enriching for them and a little bit more destructive for the whole rest of the world. So all y'all that voted for Biden last time, you really got to do some soul searching and think about who the hell are you going to vote for this time? Because burying your head in the sand is not helping.
You know, I feel as though there was a responsibility to see this through because I think that the benefits to a lot of people will be felt. And from what I have learned and believe in the monarchy, if someone in this country, if someone, especially in the US, no names mentioned, tweets or says certain things that are just categorically harmful and dangerous, you have the president and the vice president speak out against it.
Yes, and that's why there was a hearing today with the Supreme Court, because this type of behavior on behalf of the executive branch and the federal government is unconstitutional. Go figure that the one Supreme Court judge appointed by Biden, Ketanji Brown, based off of the fact that she was a Black woman, DEI hire, had stated today that the First Amendment is a hamstring on the federal government, meaning it's blocking the government from having the authority to censor Americans when they feel like it.
So my biggest concern is that your view has the First Amendment hamstringing the government in significant ways in the most important time periods. I mean, what would you have the government do? I've heard you say a couple times that the government can post its own speech, but in my hypothetical, kids, this is not safe, don't do it, is not going to get it done. And so I guess some might say that the government actually has a duty to take steps to protect the citizens of this country, and you seem to be suggesting that that duty cannot manifest itself in the government encouraging or even pressuring platforms to take down harmful information. So can you help me? Because I'm really worried about that because you've got the First Amendment operating in an environment of threatening circumstances from the government's perspective, and you're saying that the government can't interact with the source of those problems.
Now, let's take a moment to remember that this is a woman, when she was giving her testimony, couldn't define what a woman was, and also was praised by Meghan just because she was Black.
Together we put the first Black woman on the United States Supreme Court.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
The meaning of the word woman is...
Now, this last part of this video, I'm just going to touch upon this because I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, not just yet. But Peter Tickton talks about the New World Order, and he mentions something that I have never heard before called the 30 by 30.
We've heard about the 500 million goal, which would eliminate 15 out of 16 people on the planet if they had that goal. We know about 30 by 30.
I'm not going to lie, I had to look this up. I had no idea, but it appears to be an extensive land grab here in the United States as part of this global half-Earth agenda that You guessed it, folks, the UN and the WEF have been pushing. And one of its aims is setting aside 50% of the world's land, not just the United States, but this is affecting everyone, 50% of the world's land and water for conservation by 2050. So now when we think about Harry's involvement with African parks and what they have been doing, especially to the indigenous people, make no mistake, folks, that's intentional. That bad behavior and abuse that's going on is to force people off the land. And where we see all this migration happening, that too is also intentional. What concerns me is that Biden, once he took office soon after, he signed these executive orders committing to 30% of Americans' land to conservation, which means that 30% of property, let's say, if you own it, you might not be able to own it anymore in the name of conservation. Look, I don't want to get into it right now because this makes me so angry. No wonder why they want to take away our right to free speech. It's because of stuff like this. They don't want to hear from the little people like us saying, hey, you know what? We deserve to keep our house. We deserve to own our property and be able to thrive. They don't want to hear, no, we don't want to go along with this one world enslavement, essentially, because if you think about it, whoever owns the land, controls the food, controls the money, they control you. And this is where we're heading towards. They're going to be taking away land. Where are we going to put all the migrants? I mean, we've got how many million now that have entered in here? They don't even know. So where are we going to put them? But anyhow, I'm not going to get frustrated over this. Let's shift our attention to the last note, and we're ending on a bright side. In all this darkness, thank God Catherine was able to pop her head out and show us that she was okay. I'll be honest with you, this made me smile today. I'm glad to know that she is on the mend and she is getting better. But what do you guys think? A lot of weird stuff happened today, and somehow I feel like we're being distracted to look over here and not look over there because something else is going on. Definitely leave your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content, but until then, please be safe and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Such a fraud.